Imagine starting a truly thriving business. I mean, one that eventually grows into this global empire with, get this, nothing more than a single dressed calf. Or maybe just a box of tomatoes someone left on your porch by accident.
Right. These aren't just, hypothetical classroom examples.
Exactly. These are real stories, the kind of zero capital beginnings that actually inspired Warren Buffett, one of the world's greatest investors, and really sparked his lifelong fascination with money and entrepreneurship.
Uh-huh.
So today, we're diving into a classic book that proves you don't need a fortune to start something big. You just need, you need guts, the courage to start, and the discipline to see it through. Welcome to Audiobook 101 podcast, where we bring you powerful book summaries and life-changing lessons.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into the core lessons from S.C. Minaker's classic, 1,000 Ways to Make $1,000. Now, this book came out during the Great Depression. Really dark, tough times.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically this practical manifesto against despair. Jobs were gone, money had dried up. So Minaker gathered stories of, ordinary people. We're talking widows, people with disabilities, the unemployed.
People really struggling.
Absolutely. People who built new lives starting with almost nothing, minimal resources.
And that context, the Depression era, it's just so critical for understanding why these lessons hit so hard. This wasn't some abstract economic theory for people, born with silver spoons.
No, not only.
It was actionable survival advice. Minaker really wanted to show that the resources everyone still had, things like initiative, imagination, sheer persistence, those were way more valuable than, say, a bank loan.
And that's precisely why this book is still legendary today. Like you said, the Warren Buffett connection is huge. He actually credits reading this book when he was just a kid.
Yeah.
With sparking that lifelong obsession with business and investing.
Yeah.
It fundamentally shifted his thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Away from the idea that you just inherit wealth, toward the conviction that fortunes are built, one small, deliberate step at a time.
So the mission for us today, for this deep dive, is really to distill that powerful core message for you, and it boils down to this. The most important thing you need to start building a fortune isn't cash. It's guts. It's the courage to take that first step, the persistence to push through the failures, because there will be failures, and the wisdom to actually serve people with something they find valuable. Let's unpack all of that.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the concept Minaker introduces right at the start in Chapter 1, the spirit of enterprise. In this section, it's really a direct challenge. It basically says the best time to stop putting it off and start your own thing is, it's right now.
That timing element is so key, isn't it? Especially thinking back to the Depression. Minaker warns against what he calls the trap of waiting for perfect conditions.
Yep.
And that trap, it catches so many of us even today, right? We tell ourselves, I'll launch when I save up a bit more seed money, or when the economy looks better, or, when I finally feel 100% ready.
And Minaker just argues that waiting for that perfect moment, it's the ultimate killer of entrepreneurial drive. If you're waiting for the economy to be perfect or for the market to just, give you a green light, you'll never start.
Never.
The whole philosophy is start with what you know. Start with what you can do. Use the resources you already have, no matter how small they seem. And failure. In this mindset, failure isn't the end. It's just, it's the tuition fee you pay for the next attempt, the one that's going to be better.
Okay, let's really get into how a couple of entrepreneurs embodied this.
Yeah.
Starting with Gustavus Swift, from one calf to meat empire. His story is just the definition of bootstrapping against, seemingly impossible odds.
Oh, Swift's challenges were just immense. He had zero capital, zero connections, and he even had a significant physical disability that made walking really difficult for him.
Wow.
His only real asset, the one thing he truly had, was his skill as a butcher. Specifically, his incredible skill in dressing meat with just meticulous care.
Right. And he didn't sit around waiting for, refrigeration technology to be invented or for some big distributor to find him. His initiative was purely physical. He prepared one single calf, made sure the quality, the cleanliness, everything was absolutely impeccable. And then he had to physically load this meat up and walk for miles to sell it, directly to people, to local markets.
Just imagine the logistics of that. Back then, mid-19th century, way before modern cooling, he wasn't just selling meat. He was selling the guarantee of freshness and quality. And that guarantee was based purely on his personal effort and the incredibly short time between him dressing the calf and making the sale. And he saw that grueling walk, all that exhausting work, not as some terrible burden, but as his initial investment. It was the adventure of proving he could do it.
It's just an astounding lesson in pure commitment, isn't it? That one perfect product, sold through nothing but sheer initiative, that was the tiny seed that eventually grew into the Swift Meat Packing Company in Chicago. It literally changed how meat was processed and transported in America.
Incredible.
So the lesson isn't just, initiative is better than money. It's maybe that perfection, even on the smallest possible scale, is what allows for the greatest scale later on.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. If you can't execute one small thing perfectly, why would you think you could handle 1,000 things? And this same spirit, you see it echoed in the story of Mrs. Sneed in Morning Glory tomato juice. It really proves that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention, or in this case, creation.
Yeah, Mrs. Sneed, she was living in Evanston, Illinois, and suddenly faced this total financial collapse in her family. Her husband lost his job. The immediate goal wasn't getting rich, it was survival. And specifically, finding the money to send their 2 sons to college. I mean, the pressure must have been immense.
And the catalyst for her business wasn't some, complicated spreadsheet or business plan. It was a surprise gift, a box of unusually fresh, really high-quality tomatoes from a friend's garden.
Just a box of tomatoes.
Just a box of tomatoes. So she took them, made juice right there in her kitchen, and just shared some samples with her neighbors.
And the reaction was instant, really enthusiastic. And crucially, the neighbors all said it was way better than the standard stuff you'd buy in a store. That positive feedback, that market validation, that was her green light.
Right.
So they gave a name, Morning Glory Tomato Juice.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting from a business perspective. They decided to charge slightly more than the big commercial brands.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Well, because they understood that their homemade process, the freshness, the clearly superior taste, that justified a premium price. It's basically an early example of what we now call direct-to-consumer excellence, right? Where the quality and the story behind the product beat out just competing on bulk price.
And the demand just took off incredibly fast. They didn't stay stuck in the kitchen for long. They rented a small plant near the railroad, started producing in bulk, quickly got contracts supplying local hotels, even the dining cars on trains.
What?
And then they expanded into other food products too. Started small, proved the concept with literally zero cash outlay, just those gifted tomatoes, and they only scaled up after customers proved they'd pay that premium.
The big takeaway from both Swift and Sneed is what we can call the zero capital mindset. Both of them faced really severe difficulties, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't focus on what they lacked, which was money. They focused on what they did possess, a skill like Swift, or an immediate resource like Mrs. Sneed's tomatoes. They acted now. And that just completely validates Minaker's core idea.
Yeah, that focus on immediate action, it leads perfectly into our next section, which is Chapter 2, Why Aim for $1,000? This really shifts the focus away from these vague, kind of overwhelming ideas about getting rich and brings it down to a clear, psychologically powerful first goal.
Minaker's really insistent on this. He says the first step has to be practical. Earning your first $1,000. Now, for someone struggling through the Depression, $1,000 was, it was a fortune. It was life-changing money.
Huge amount back then.
Huge. But the real power of that number isn't just its size, it's its function. It acts as this tangible, crystal clear target.
And you can really see the psychology there, can't you? If your goal is just vague, like be successful or make a fortune, you just sort of drift.
Yeah, you drift.
And drifting, that leads to wasted effort, and eventually you just give up. But when you fix your sights on $1,000, suddenly every action, every single sale you make, every hour you put in, it's tied directly to hitting that specific goal.
Exactly right. For an entrepreneur just starting out, that first $1,000 is absolutely monumental. It does 3 critical things. First, it proves your idea actually works in the real world, not just in your head.
Right, validation.
Validation. Second, it validates all the effort you've put in. And third, maybe most importantly, it builds that crucial internal confidence you absolutely need to aim higher. Once you've proven the business model works even once, you know the basic principles are sound. Scaling up then becomes more about repetition and refining things.
We see this principle perfectly in action with Otto Schnaring and the birth of the Baby Ruth bar. Otto started really young, just 21. He bought a candy-making machine for only $100. Tiny investment, but it's how he used that investment that really holds the lesson.
Well, Otto's initial failure is one of those common mistakes beginners make, even today. He made candies that he personally liked.
Oh, the classic mistake.
The classic mistake. He assumed his own, maybe more sophisticated taste reflected what the mass market wanted. And of course, these fancy personal preference candies, they just didn't sell. He was failing to hit that $1,000 target because his product was fundamentally misplaced for the market.
But his pivot, that was just genius and so pragmatic. He stopped guessing and started actually studying the mass market. He figured out the 3 types of candy ingredients that were basically eternally popular with everyday working people: chocolate, peanuts, and caramel.
The Magic 3.
The Magic 3. So he focused his entire production on combining just those 3 elements into one perfect, affordable 5-cent bar, the Baby Ruth.
And the lesson there is just invaluable still today. Success often comes not from just chasing your own personal passion project, but from finding and serving a proven, consistent market demand. Otto hit his $1,000 goal and then blew past it, growing exponentially because he finally started listening to the market, not just his own taste buds.
Okay, now let's look at that idea of the first $1,000 being like survival fuel. And this is perfectly illustrated by Mrs. McDougall, Coffee, Persistence, and Guts. She was a widow in New York City who inherited this tiny coffee blending business.
And the environment she stepped into was incredibly hostile. Her competitors, mostly men, openly predicted she'd be out of business within 6 months, just based on her being a woman and having minimal resources.
Wow.
But Mrs. McDougall, she possessed this almost, well, superhuman level of persistence.
Get this. She decided she would personally cover a 75-mile radius around New York City. Now think about that in the 1930s.
No easy transport.
No easy transport. It meant long, incredibly arduous travel, visiting every single potential bulk, customer hospitals, private clubs, sanatoriums, lugging her coffee samples with her. This wasn't, targeted digital marketing. This was raw, physical determination.
And that grit, it paid off dramatically. She wasn't just scraping by, she was genuinely thriving. Within just 2 years, she had earned $20,000.
$20,000 in the Depression.
An absolutely astronomical sum back then. She expanded to 6 coffee shops and, maybe most astonishingly, she was still opening new restaurants, even during the absolute depths of the Depression, all while she was 65 years old.
I think we just need to pause on that 75-mile circle for a second. That level of sheer dedication, it's almost hard to fathom today, isn't it? It really makes you wonder, for us modern entrepreneurs, how often do we let convenience become an excuse? She didn't have Google Maps or Uber. She just had a product she believed in and this tireless belief in her own ability to sell it.
That's really the core of the Minaker challenge right there. Her story just proves that the only real limiting factor isn't your age or your starting capital or the hardship you face. It's that internal grit. It's the refusal to accept limits imposed by others or by circumstances. That first $1,000, it was her proof of concept, and she used it like rocket fuel for explosive growth. Okay, so Minaker then dedicates Chapter 3. Selling is a business entirely to the entrepreneurial path that requires the absolute least amount of capital investment. This is the path that's accessible to literally anyone who's willing to just step out their front door and start talking to people.
And the advantages of focusing on sales, especially when you're just starting, are huge, aren't they? Your main capital isn't money. It's more like social currency, building trust, goodwill, and just plain hustle.
Exactly.
And since you're directly responsible for the results, your income potential is basically uncapped. You genuinely get to create your own raise based on your effort.
We can kind of organize Minaker's wisdom on sales into 3 really critical pillars for success. Let's start with the first one. Persistence, perfectly embodied by Lucille Anthony. She started selling silk stockings door to door after being abandoned with her baby. A really tough situation.
Yeah, and Lucille immediately faced the most common hurdle in sales, just constant soul-crushing rejection from strangers. You know the lines, "Not today, I'm busy, maybe come back next week." If she had just accepted those initial rejections, she would have failed almost instantly.
But she developed this very specific counter tactic. It was a polite, professional refusal to take that first no as the final answer. When someone rejected her, she'd maintain eye contact and politely say something like, "I promise I won't take much of your time. May I just show you something very quickly?"
Softening the approach.
Exactly. It softened the approach, focused on a minimal time commitment, and maintained professional courtesy. And that often won her entry where a more aggressive, hard sell would have just slammed the door shut.
And the results really speak for themselves, don't they? Get this. She sold 56 pairs of stockings to just 2 sorority houses in a single afternoon.
Wow, 56 pairs.
Yeah. Her resilience wasn't just about knocking on more doors. It was about using this refined psychological strategy to turn what seemed like a rejection into a brief actual opportunity.
Okay, moving to the second pillar. Demonstration, shown beautifully by George Conrad selling slicing machines. Now, his customers were typically pretty cautious butchers and grocers, already deeply worried about cutting costs during the Depression. Money was incredibly tight, and trust was low.
So George used this brilliant psychological pricing and staging technique. First, he'd show them a large poster of the machine, deliberately setting the expectation that this thing was going to be expensive.
Setting the anchor high.
Exactly. After the customer had mentally prepared themselves for a big investment, then George would reveal the actual machine.
And then he'd ask the customer, okay, based on what you've seen, how much do you think you could afford to pay for something like this? When the customer inevitably named a price, maybe $10, George would dramatically reveal that the actual price was only $7.50.
Huh. The relief must have been huge.
Huge. The shock of affordability closed the sale right then and there because he had perfectly managed their expectations before he dropped the actual price.
It's really not just about the product itself, it's all about the reveal, isn't it? Minaker includes other great examples too, like Dwight Ritchie, who sold this fabric mending fluid. When people were hesitant, he didn't argue. He just quickly repaired a run in a stocking right there in front of them. Boom, instant trust established.
Seeing is believing.
Totally. The core lesson is clear. Don't just tell customers how good your product is. Let them witness the result for themselves.
Okay, and the final pillar is targeting, exemplified by Frank Dupree selling fire extinguishers. Now, Dupree's story is crucial because he actually had a good product, but he was failing spectacularly at first. Why? Because he was trying to sell them to uninterested homeowners who just saw the product as a low-priority optional expense.
Oh, that's such a critical error, and people still make it all the time in marketing today, right?
Yeah.
You can have the absolute best solution in the world, but if you're pitching it to the wrong audience, you're just wasting your breath. You get zero return.
Exactly.
So Dupree's finally made this brilliant shift. He completely changed his target audience. He started focusing on firms that legally required fire protection or businesses that stood to lose an absolute fortune in fireplaces like warehouses, garages, factories.
He carefully planned his route to hit these specific types of businesses, and success followed almost immediately. Why? Because for a factory owner, a fire extinguisher wasn't some optional nice-to-have item like it was for a homeowner. It was a critical risk management tool, a necessity.
Right.
One factory bought 10 units right off the bat. He started earning $300 a week in commissions instantly. That just shows the massive difference between trying to sell a want versus selling a clear need to the right audience.
What's really fascinating about this whole sales section in Minaker's book is the emphasis on just high-energy, high-imagination activity. It feels like the only real limit to these individuals' income was their own energy level and their willingness to keep trying different ways to find the right audience and demonstrate the value effectively.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now. We're moving into chapter 4 and 5. Making and raising things to sell. This part of the book offers hope and practical ideas for those folks who maybe find more fulfillment in actually creating something or crafting things or maybe working the land rather than doing direct door-to-door sales.
But the underlying message, it really stays the same, doesn't it? That old saying, genius is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. If you have a passion for making something, you still have to translate that passion into a product or service that fills a specific need. And then, crucially, you have to execute it with just relentless excellence.
Let's start with turning passion into product. And there's this fantastic story of Billy Bevan, the comedian turned soap maker. Now, Billy Bevan was a successful theater comedian, but his career was completely shattered when an illness forced him into recovery way out in a remote pine forest.
So instead of just despairing about his lost career, he actually started observing his surroundings. He loved the scent of the pine forest where he was recovering, and he had this thought, hey, I should figure out a way to bring this amazing fragrance to people back in the city. So what did he do? He created pine-scented soap.
Simple idea, born from observation.
Exactly.
But here's when the business genius comes in. He couldn't afford any expensive advertising, obviously. So he leveraged the only asset he had left, his comedic personality and his natural showmanship, to sell the product himself. He went around and personally convinced hotel managers to just try his soap, using sheer force of personality and persuasion.
And he added that brilliant, memorable label to the soap, "This soap will keep everything clean but your conscience." I mean, that's fantastic branding right there, nearly a century ago.
It really is.
His creativity and his persistence completely reinvented his entire career. He turned a simple bar of soap into this unique, personally marketed product.
Then there's the example that really focuses on sheer quality. Mrs. Smith Brooklyn's baking success. She was a widow, loved to bake, and she started selling things like nut breads, coffee cakes, and pies to local tea rooms in Brooklyn. Her initial logistics, super minimal. Her young son delivered all the goods by bicycle.
And her success was completely built on taste and consistency. Her baked goods were just so good, baked with love, superior ingredients, that customers didn't just come back, they actively sought them out. One local tourist camp became her single best customer for an entire summer, just based on word of mouth about how great her stuff was. It really shows that excellence, just doing something really well with care, generates the best, most authentic marketing you can get.
And one more great story here about innovation, about finding a better use for something others discard. Mrs. Knapp pressed chicken innovation. She faced this really common farm problem back then. What to do with spent hens, these older birds that were too tough and stringy to sell in the regular meat market? Most farmers just got rid of them.
But her innovation wasn't some complex new technology. It was a simple tweak in her process. She started using a pressure cooker. This softened the tough meat, she seasoned it carefully, and then she packaged it and sold it as pressed chicken.
Giving it value.
Exactly. She turned what everyone else saw as basically worthless agricultural waste into a premium specialty product. It's a great reminder that innovation doesn't always mean inventing something brand new. Sometimes it just means optimizing what's already there or finding a better use for it. Okay, now shifting gears slightly to using the land and natural systems in Chapter 5. Minaker shows how opportunities are literally right under our feet. Let's start with Howard Whiteley Chickens for health and profit. This guy quit a desk job because of poor health, bought a farm, and decided he was going to raise chickens, even though he knew absolutely nothing about it.
But he demonstrated the real power of self-education. He didn't just guess or wing it. He diligently studied every single agriculture bulletin he could get his hands on. And he went out and visited successful, established chicken farms nearby to learn their best practices firsthand. This commitment to actually learning the business separated him from the average farmer just trying to get by.
And the result of all that study was superior quality chickens. He specialized in these plump, milk-fed chickens, and he supplied them directly to high-end hotels and restaurants. And because his quality was so consistent and his packaging was careful and looked professional, he could charge a premium price.
Right.
It just proves that even in basic commodities like poultry, putting in the extra care and focusing on quality allows you to command premium returns.
And look also at the incredible efficiency model of Laz Lewin mushrooms in the cellar. This is just a masterclass in utilizing overlooked dormant assets. Lewin invested a small amount in mushroom spawn, and then he built a simple 10-foot by 10-foot growing bed in his unused cellar space.
He basically figured out how to monetize rent-free, naturally climate-controlled space that was just sitting there empty. He sold his very first crop of mushrooms for $110, having spent almost nothing on marketing or location costs.
Smart.
Very smart. And he quickly scaled that successful model up to 1,000 square feet of mushroom beds in his cellar.
The lesson there, and it scales beautifully to the modern idea of a side hustle, right? Is that unused space, whether it's a garage, a spare closet, a basement, it can be transformed into a profitable, specialized micro-farm or a little production facility if you just find the right high-line niche. Could be mushrooms, could be tropical fish, could be crafting custom jewelry, anything where space isn't the main cost driver. Okay, let's move on now to Chapter 6 and 7, Roadside Stands and Storekeeping. This section really leverages the power of location and also taps into the psychology of impulse buying.
Yeah, the basic idea is if you happen to live near a busy road, a main thoroughfare, you essentially have this captive audience driving past you constantly. And the key to roadside success, according to Minaker, is serving an immediate, obvious, and probably recurring need that those travelers have.
So for Roadside Solutions, we have this really inspiring story of a late career entrepreneur, Mrs. Ella Gaston Worms, that sold by the million. Now, Mrs. Gaston was a 77-year-old widow living near the Ozark fishing country. She was sick, and she was deeply in debt. A tough spot.
But her observation was beautifully simple. She just noticed the traffic going by. Cars packed full of fishermen heading to the lakes and rivers. And what do fishermen always need, often at the last minute?
Bait.
Bait, exactly. She recognized this was an immediate emergency purchase for them. They weren't likely to drive miles out of their way to find a hardware store. They needed bait right then and there.
So what did she do?
Yeah.
She dug worms from her garden. She built a simple but highly visible roadside stand, and she put a huge, clear sign, fish baits for sale. Simple, direct.
Yeah.
And she rapidly scaled up, selling up to 1,000 dozen worms daily at peak times. Eventually, she sold over 1 million worms, paid off all her considerable debts just through sheer volume and identified that perfect location and need.
That's just classic entrepreneurial alignment, isn't it? The
Yeah.
perfect product at the perfect time in the perfect location, serving a guaranteed immediate need. Now contrast that slightly with James Mowery affordable tires on the highway.
Mowery's idea actually came from his own personal pain point. He got a flat tire himself while traveling, and he realized there was this huge demand among travelers for a guaranteed but still affordable tire solution. Not everyone could afford brand new tires, especially during the Depression.
So he set up his stand near an established gas station, which was smart leveraging existing traffic. And he advertised very clearly, home of Jimmy's guaranteed tires, $2.25 and up. His core promise was affordability combined with reliability, aimed right at stranded motorists.
Right, solving that emergency.
Exactly. He sold 50 rebuilt guaranteed tires in just his first 2 days, making a profit of $52. It just demonstrates that roadside success often comes from solving those traveler emergencies affordably and effectively.
Okay, now let's move into the store itself with specialty store success in Chapter 7. Here, Minaker stresses that physical stores often succeed by providing a really useful service, frequently through attractive specialization and smart presentation. Take Kanowski's pet shop Birds and Puppies as salesman.
Kanowski initially made a common mistake. He rented a space that was actually too large for the amount of stock he had. So the shop looked kind of barren, uninviting.
Yeah, empty space isn't appealing.
Not at all. But his solution wasn't just to buy more inventory he couldn't afford. It was about strategic presentation.
What he did was build this large, pretty inexpensive cage. Cost him $36, and he filled it with colorful, chirping birds, placing it right in the front window. This display was immediately attractive. It generated both sound and visual curiosity, and it literally drew crowds inside off the street.
And then he added playful, non-pedigree puppies near the front, too. And their quick sales, driven purely by impulse buys because, well, who can resist a puppy?
Impossible.
Those puppy sales literally covered his entire rent and his electricity bill. The lesson is timeless. Presentation matters. An attractive display, whether it's chirping birds or a cute puppy, is often a store's most effective and cheapest salesman.
And then, of course, there's the almost foundational story of Ted Landsman, the Cheeseburger King. This guy started with absolutely nothing. He traded his beat-up old truck for a failing hamburger shack and literally began his first day with just 11 cents in his pocket.
But Landsman understood something crucial. Even in a commodity business like fast food, quality really matters. He focused intensely on using high-quality beef and really good buns. And he charged 15 cents for his burger, which was actually slightly more than his competitors were charging.
His critical point of differentiation, though, the thing that made him famous, actually came directly from customer feedback. One day, a customer just asked him, "Hey, can you put a slice of cheese on my burger?" Landsman listened, he tried it, and boom! The cheeseburger was born.
Just like that.
Just like that. This small, high-quality differentiation quickly created a craze. It built this incredibly loyal, massive following for his shack. It just proves that sometimes the best product innovation comes not from some grand strategic plan, but simply from listening carefully to an offhand customer request.
Minaker also throws in these brilliant little examples of low-cost promotion throughout this section, like John Harding in Chicago, who used really humorous newspaper ads that perfectly matched funny window displays to pack his struggling restaurant, or Howard Stevens, who used 17 brightly colored roadside signs counting down the miles to his inn.
Building anticipation.
Exactly. The promotion doesn't need to be expensive. It just needs to be clever, visible, and deliver a clear, unified message that grabs attention.
All right, let's delve now into Chapter 8 and 9, Selling Things by Mail and Services. This section is really the precursor to modern e-commerce and the gig economy. It shows how you can monetize skills, specialized information, and niche products remotely without needing a physical storefront.
Yeah, mail order back then, it required no physical store, just like e-commerce today. You needed a specific product, a very targeted audience, a good mailing list, which is like your email list now, and persuasive communication. The core principles are strikingly identical to modern email marketing and those direct-to-consumer sales funnels we see everywhere.
We can learn so much from these lessons from mail order pioneers. Let's start with Henry Field Seeds and personal sales letters. Field began by selling seeds door to door, the old-fashioned way, building personal trust through friendly, face-to-face interaction.
But to scale that trust beyond what he could physically do, he used a printing press to produce sales letters. But here's the key. He didn't write them in formal, stuffy corporate language. He insisted that the letters sound exactly like he spoke. Friendly, simple, direct, like a neighbor talking over the fence.
And his key rule was always brevity. He knew farmers were busy people. They didn't have time for long essays. So his letters got straight to the point, quickly stated his business, explained the value, and then asked directly for the order. No beating around the bush.
Clear call to action.
Clear call to action.
Yeah.
And this personalized conversational style, scaled up through print, grew his seed business into millions of dollars in annual sales eventually. The lesson: effective sales communication, whether it's printed on paper or shows up in an email inbox, feels like a genuine conversation with a trusted friend.
And focusing on the right audience is just paramount in mail order, isn't it? Like the story of J.W. Robertson and Son, who sold Havana cigars. Their success didn't come from writing flashy advertisements. It came from relentlessly refining their targeted mailing list over decades. They focused only on serious, high-spending cigar buyers.
They knew their niche.
They absolutely knew their niche. They understood that the quality and the targeting of your customer list matter far, far more than just the sheer size of the list. That's a powerful lesson for anyone doing list segmentation or targeted ads today.
Okay, so if mail order is about selling products remotely, then turning skills into specialty services, covered in Chapter 9, is all about monetizing specialized labor or expertise. We see this perfectly with the Chicago dressmaker finding a niche market.
She didn't just try to be a general dressmaker. She recognized a specific pain point. She overheard a stout woman complaining about how impossible it was to find clothes that fit her specific body type well.
Identifying an underserved market.
Exactly. So instead of trying to compete with all the general tailor shops, she specialized.
She became known as the expert for women with specific, often difficult-to-fit body types. Later, she expanded her niche to include tailoring clothes for very tall women as well. By choosing to solve a problem that almost no one else was willing or able to address properly, she essentially owned that niche market. And because she was the specialist, she could command a premium price for her unique expertise.
This principle of shifting your market focus when one approach isn't working, we also see that with Edward Anderson, rug washing made easy. He bought a carpet cleaning machine on an installment plan after losing his job, but his initial attempts at door-to-door sales targeting homeowners failed completely.
So what did he do? He didn't just give up. He shifted his focus entirely. He stopped going door-to-door to houses and started targeting commercial clients instead. Hotels, apartment building managers, office buildings, places that needed large-scale, regular cleaning.
Bigger contract.
Much bigger contracts. He immediately landed substantial 93 thrivers and 107 contracts. For commercial services like rake cleaning, consistency and the ability to handle volume often beat trying to make lots of small, individual sales. It just proves again that persistence, combined with a willingness to pivot your market strategy, is absolutely key in the service industry.
And just for sheer creative thinking, we absolutely have to talk about Arthur Ruggles' cemetery lots for profit. This is amazing. Ruggles saw this severely neglected cemetery in Kansas, and he went to the owner and offered to landscape it, to fix it up.
But the owner couldn't afford to pay him in cash. Now, most people would have just walked away at that point. But Ruggles' entrepreneurial mind went into overdrive. Instead of demanding cash, he proposed a different kind of payment. He asked to be paid in valuable cemetery lots within the cemetery he was about to improve.
Wow, bartering for real estate.
Essentially, yes. He bartered his landscaping service for actual plots of land.
And then, get this. He immediately started selling those newly maintained, now much more desirable, cemetery plots. He actually made a $1,000 profit before he had even finished the landscaping job. He turned this creative payment arrangement into a steady, profitable business.
Incredible hustle.
It just shows that thinking outside the box about payment, things like bartering, maybe proposing joint ventures, or even accepting equity instead of cash, can unlock these really unusual, sometimes highly profitable opportunities that traditional cash-only entrepreneurs might miss entirely.
Okay, so finally we arrive at Chapter 10, Paying for a College Education. And this chapter really serves as Minaker's ultimate conclusion. It drives home the point that these principles of enterprise, of initiative and persistence, they apply at any age and in absolutely any circumstance.
Yeah, these stories about students aren't just about them earning tuition money. They're really about these young people developing crucial life skills, discipline, character, And fundamentally understanding that success is something you create through your own actions. It's not something that's just granted to you through privilege or waiting around.
Consider the story of the car polisher from alley to university. This was a student at Washington University who saw an opportunity. He approached men who were washing their own cars in alleys or driveways, and he offered to professionally simonize their car for just $3, which was significantly less than the standard $5 garage fee at the time.
But he wasn't just competing on price, he was professional about it. He actually used a neat little business card, and he maintained this courteous, initiative-driven demeanor. He wasn't just some kid asking for money, he presented himself as a service provider.
Right, professionalism matters.
Totally. And by ensuring consistency, making sure he polished at least one car every single day, he managed to cover his entire university tuition. It just shows how professionalism and pure hustle can turn even simple, low-cost services into a steady, scalable income stream.
Then there's that wonderful story about simple creativity just catching fire. The Missouri girl, puppy pins, that became a fad. This was a college girl who started carving these small, cute, wooden puppy pins just as a hobby in her spare time.
But her friends immediately loved them. They started asking for them. And soon, local shops caught wind of it and started placing orders. This simple, creative hobby quickly scaled up into a thriving little mini business that actually paid for her entire college education.
Amazing.
It just goes to show a creative skill, even something small and seemingly non-essential like carving little pins, can absolutely become a profitable fad if it's executed well and happens to catch the attention of a wider audience.
So ultimately, Minaker brings it all back home. He reinforces that central thesis again. The goal of earning your very first $1,000 is absolutely critical. Why? Because it provides that concrete, achievable target, and maybe more importantly, it builds the vital internal confidence you need to grow bigger.
That first win.
That first win is everything. Every single story we've talked about today, from Gustavus Swift selling his one calf to Mrs. Sneed with her tomatoes to the student polishing a car, they're all fundamentally connected by the same threads. Courage to start, persistence to keep going, and creativity applied consistently over time.
Yeah, that courage, that's the initial spark, isn't it? And the persistence, that's the fuel that keeps you going when things get tough. The book's message is just timeless. Winners never quit. You have to set a clear, practical target first. Then you have to start immediately using whatever meager resources you actually have around you right now. And you absolutely cannot be afraid of failure. You have to view every setback not as an ending, but as essential learning, like paying tuition for the next better attempt.
And remember, this book didn't just offer practical tips for people struggling through the depression. It provided a foundational philosophy, a philosophy that literally ignited the future career of Warren Buffett. It teaches us that the barriers to entry in almost any business, even today with all our complexities, are often much lower than we tend to believe.
So the message for you, our listener, is really simple when you boil it down. If a 77-year-old widow could figure out how to sell 1 million worms to pay off her debts, and if a guy starting with literally 11 cents could launch a restaurant empire, then earning your first $1,000. That is absolutely within your reach.
And maybe here's the provocative thought we want to leave you with today, something to mull over. If your current job, or maybe your primary skill set, was completely taken away from you tomorrow, what is the single most minimal resource you already possess that you could use, not even to earn $1,000, but just to earn $100 today? And more importantly, what specific, concrete action could you take right now to start turning that minimal resource into immediate cash?
Thanks for listening to Audiobook 101 podcast.
Join us again for more books that help you grow in life, business, and success.
And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring book summaries.